In the wake of two police killings in Houston and Chicago, law enforcement has suddenly decided it's all the fault of Black Lives Matter. They're echoing what Fox News and shock jocks like Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly have been saying. O'Reilly in particular has been taking aim at the movement multiple times during his shows, saying things like, "Every time there's a controversy about an officer shooting a black person, they're out there stirring the pot." Various hosts have called BLM a murder movement and even a hate group. Meanwhile, presidential candidates like Senator Ted Cruz and former Governor Scott Walker have also jumped on the bandwagon, tying Black Lives Matter to what they call an anti-police culture that they also blame President Obama for. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee said that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would be, quote, appalled at the movement's focus on race. To its credit, the New York Times editorial board penned an op-ed last week responding to these sentiments, saying, quote, "This argument betrays a disturbing indifference to, or at best a profound ignorance of history in general, and of the civil rights movement in particular." Joining me in studio today is Melina, Abdullah. She's a professor and a chair of the Department of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA and an major organizer with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. Welcome to Uprising, Melina.
Thank you for having me, Sonali.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, we've had conversations now over several months, and I really appreciated sort of your analysis on national but also local level. Let's first talk about how new these attacks against Black Lives Matter are. Has the right been maligning the movement from the start, or are you sort of noticing a new level of attacks? Because it's always useful for conservatives to bash movements, particularly led by people of color, while they're campaigning for an election because it helps them appease their voter base.
Absolutely. The right never liked us, and it was never really our job to get the right to like us, right? So really what the movement is about is dismantling a system that oppresses us, and the right is invested in that system. Now, what we're seeing happen over the recent weeks is kind of a ramping up of the way in which they attack Black Lives Matter and kind of the viciousness of the attacks. However, we also need to recognize that those are rooted in the history of any Black liberation movement. So I think the New York Times piece did a really good job at kind of reframing the civil rights movement. And if we were to go deeper, we could think about the way in which Martin Luther King, who Mike Huckabee had the audacity to invoke, right, was attacked by the same right wing that's attacking us. And